on the global stage, though, is the question.
I think it's got every chance. I think I don't want to be the person that argues he's not the best player in the world. I don't think he is the best player in the world, but I don't want to be on the side that has to argue he definitely isn't, if that makes any sense. Like, that's not a hill I'm willing to die on. It just seems a little bit too close because he is incredibly good. And I also get the impression that he's even doing this sort of freewheeling slightly at times as well. Maybe it's just because he brings good decks that does that. But yeah, someone's getting the impression he bought the same decks as last week. Oh, he won anyway. Who cares? I wonder what he could do if pushed. Monsanto, however, does do a lot of his own homework. He does bring his, what I think of as his Pain Warrior deck, although obviously it's not his Pain Warrior deck.
Ends now.
Yes, no, I mean, just bringing it at all this week, I think was very, very clever, because the two Warriors were the decks that got banned in the end, so we're not going to get to see the Pain Warrior from Monsanto, or the slightly more standard Bomb Warrior from Surrender. But I absolutely agree. I think Monsanto definitely does come up with his own strategies, homebrew stuff, but he never goes too off the wall. He's never going for these crazy strategies like a Tars back in the day or something like that. And there always is strong reasoning behind them. So I think he's in a really good spot to turn this around from an 0-1 start to potentially an 8-1 finish if everything goes his way.
And everything's gone his way in theory on the start here by queuing up this Demon Hunter into the Rogue, but Surrender's hand has a lot of potential to get very good very quickly. He's not actually going to go for he's going to go for more nuts though.
Interesting, yeah. The backstab, I think I can definitely agree with. That you can make the assumption at first glance that Demon Hunter is a deck that just goes face, you don't really care about their minions, but locking down their early board is of the utmost importance as Rogue. You need to be making sure you're not taking that chip damage, and then you start to have a chance of outlasting the damage. But I agree, the main thing that Surrender is trying to do as the Rogue isn't outlast, it's counter pressure. Get those big Edwins and Questings online ASAP.
Yep, and so he did decide to get rid of the questing, maybe feeling it was just a little bit too slow because you've got to play it, then you've got to coin the secret passage and maybe not quite get there. So looking for precisely Edwin, most likely there. I agree with you on the backstab. It turns out that when you play a lot of small minions yourself, your opponent's 1/3s are incredibly irritating.
Yeah, that's true, especially when you get the Miscreant. I mean, I think Miscreant was probably a big thing that Surrender would have been looking for in the starting hand, just to go nice and wide on the board. It's the kind of shape where, you know, obviously if they have the Shard Shatter, you're pretty upset. But if they don't, then you can go nice and wide and just lock them down out of any kind of board control for the rest of the game.
And Monsanto experiencing here that the failure rate that I think that maybe, I have the suspicion that the Soul Fragments were meant to build into these decks. As it turns out, these decks don't fail very often, but he hasn't got an activator for any of his stuff that he's going to be drawing now.
Yes. Let's take a look at the rest of the cards in his list. He's playing one Consume Magic, so that double jump is a 50-50 for Consume Magic and Skull at the moment to draw an extra card if he wants to consume. But you're right, this is looking a little bit clunky right now, and things starting to look a lot better for Surrender as he finds one of the big three of either Ice Barrier, Frostbolt, or Deep Freeze as the Icy Trilogy that is so powerful against Demon Hunter. Later on in the game, Frostbolt is just denying them a turn. There's so little that they can do, and it really allows you to close out the game if you have an aggressive board.
I was hoping that some of the mages would just main Deep Freeze. It makes no sense. It clutters up your hand. It makes no space for evocation. You can't play it. But I was just hoping that some of the mages would just bring one in their deck to just completely mess up Demon Hunter. Obviously, we do see the compromise with some of them bringing Frostbolt.
Yeah.
But back to this turn. Sorry.
Well, yeah, the interesting thing for me here, actually, for Surrender, is the fact that he picked Rolling Fireball over Combustion. I was pretty tempted, honestly, by the Combustion, because I think it's just a better card, honestly, most of the time, with the way the damage rolls out. I appreciate his hand at the moment. He's looking quite low on stuff to do, so having a more expensive card does make sense to an extent, but I do find that interesting. I thought it looked kind of good as just a cheaper option to deal 4 damage to maybe a Glaive-bound Adept later on.
Yeah, maybe he's a little bit scared of the 5/5s, although he shouldn't be. Like, you know, but if he's got Blade Dance and then a 5/5 drop the Lapidary next turn, maybe that would be an issue. But yeah, I agree with you. I was surprised as well, I must admit.
A real high skill point of the Rogue deck is, of course, knowing what your opponent's average turn is likely to be with respect to Plagiarize. Because traditionally on turn 4, the only play you're really expecting that spends all the mana is the Marrow Slicer, of course, to come down and start swinging face. But Monsanto just equipped a weapon on turn 3, so it's actually quite difficult to predict what they're likely to spend their mana on next turn. And even though Plagiarize is like the most tempting play on this turn, it doesn't feel like it's likely to be very good, actually, to me.
Yeah, you really don't know. I think you've got to give Monsanto the read for having 3 weapons in hand at this point, which is totally the wrong read, but why does your opponent play a weapon on turn 3? You don't want to play this until you've taken some damage as Demon Hunter. You want to pump it up and heal yourself. So maybe you get the read there's 2 Warblades in hand at least. But the reality of the situation is that Monsanto's just trying to hold on to cast his Skull and try and get out of this absolute horror story he's in right now. Something straight out of Dark Moon Fair happening to him right here.
I grow impatient.
Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't quite have the Yogg wheel to be digging him out of this one quite yet, though.
And he doesn't even have a feel for where to go with this weapon. I mean, I'm sure he has a good feel where to go, and he's just considering it very carefully, but that Blade Dance is going to be huge, given that his hand is so bad.
Yeah,
maybe it's not as bad as I'm thinking, but it looks grim.
Still lacking information as to what the secret is. He knows it's not ambush now, but he's still tossing up between Plagiarize and the Dirty Tricks. Double Jump is, I think, a good kind of middle ground to go for in a way, because it's a useless secret to give your opponent. But at the same time, if it is Dirty Tricks, there's a lot of value in just not playing a spell on this turn, and thus denying them the draw. But as you can see from Surrender's expression and the fact that Monsanto didn't draw him the 2 cards and just gave him a useless double jump, this worked out pretty well for Monsanto.
Yeah, it's gone pretty well. I'm trying to live in the world where Surrender kept the questing adventurer and is just hitting Monsanto for 9 every turn right now. But obviously he didn't know that Monsanto was going to get what I keep referring to as a terrible draw. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just looks oof.
I mean, it's slow. This is definitely a hand that can win, because once you play the Skull, the lack of Soul Fragments actually works to your benefit, because you're guaranteed to get the triple discount off of the Skull, rather than drawing any Soul Fragments to reset the cost to full. And, you know, with Blade Dance, he's also got the kind of hand that can regain the board after he's lost it. So I definitely don't want to call Monsanto out of the game quite yet, especially as, like you said, Surrender's got board control at the start, but he's not killing his opponent anytime soon. This is a very low damage start.
Yeah, it feels like he's done a lot of nothing, which Rogue sometimes does and feels threatening after they've done it, and sometimes it doesn't feel that threatening. And right now, yeah, I'm not scared if I'm Monsanto by what my opponent is doing. I'm more scared by my own deck right now. Obviously, this makes Blade Dance useless.
Yes, yeah, that's the big one. This kind of demands now Shard Shatter instead of a Blade Dance. And even though it's not a life-threatening amount of damage quite yet, given that he, of course, still has the weapons intact, it's getting a little scary. It's starting to reach that point.
Well, the Lapidaries have turned up, but where are their friends? Just needs those fragments. But they should come. He's got Skull next turn. He's not dying anytime soon. I have seen like Boar Control have this happen to him 3 or 4 games in a row. You just don't win if you don't draw a fragment generator, but surely he will.
Yes, I've had it a few times. I mean, it's very unlikely to happen more than once or twice per tournament, especially when you have Skull of Gul'dan in there, because you have quite a lot of Soul Fragment cards, and drawing all 3 of these before a single Soul Fragment shuffler is unfortunate for sure.
I think this is one of the differences in Monsanto. He's always been very sort of quiet and reserved about his play anyway, but now he just gets on with it. He went 0-1 yesterday and just tweeted out a little bit of a dig as well, but he just tweeted out, well, I'm 0-1, but I'm just going to carry on playing and win the rest of my matches. Like, we'll be fine. Again, a bit of a dig at some of the players, RDU, Alan, Sayin, who's just all dropped out at 0-1, but there you go.
Get him! Get him!
Oh, it's something that I'm quite passionate about.
I'm sure.
I feel that, so if you're a very well-known player, there are people in this tournament who will play one Masters Tour in their life. and it will be their big tournament. They will go 2-5 or something, and it will be the only big tournament they ever play, and they've been denied the chance to play Alan, Stain, or RDU because they dropped out. That's why I really get upset about it. It's up to them if they want to drop out from their own reasons, but for me, I would rather those players make the choice to stay in to give those other people a chance to play against them. And that's my rant over for the day.
Fair enough. Within this individual game, though, Surrender makes the kind of interesting choice. I was looking at the Frostbolt on this turn in order, obviously, just to deny some weapon swings. But the more I look at it, I'm kind of unconvinced because they still have the ability to clear the board, obviously, if they activate a Shard Shatter or just go Blade Dance on its own. The 2 damage is still enough to clear off a lot of this board if they have to. And just developing the Wand Maker and then, I guess, Shadow Stepping the Miscreant, if you want to go about it that way. I don't know, it felt like maybe there was more likely to be a better opportunity for the Shard Shatter later. Oh, sorry, for the Frostbolt later on.
Yeah, because you know now that obviously Monsanto is going to start doing stuff next turn. If he doesn't, it doesn't matter. You've won the game anyway. So it's a good point. Frostbolting quite early, and it's going to allow Monsanto just heal all the way back up because you know what his hand is. Like, you know what hands he's going to have that can beat you. I mean, he obviously, if he's got garbage, you just don't care. You can do what you like. But next turn's going to be interesting for Monsanto. I'm sure he's planning it already. Now he's got the 0-mana Spirit Jailer. Everything's going to kick off.
And I mean, now's the time where you really wish you had the Frostbolt because they've played the Skull. Now is when they're likely to get the attack buffs like the Twin Slice, the Soul Shard Lapidary to actually heal back up to a healthier life total.
Yeah, and we're going to see it in action, right? We're going to see 3 minions destroyed and 7 damage probably go to phase and heal up, and Surrender's going to have to rejig to some extent.
Well, to be fair, the totals don't work out beautifully on this turn because quite clearly Monsanto wants to play the Shard Shatter to clear this board on the turn. But that does mean he can't play the Soul Shard Lapidary all on the same turn because he's 1 mana short. So he can't get a big board clear and a big weapon buff all on the same turn. It's still a little bit awkward, which leaves the window open for Surrender.
I think it might be tempting to go Lapidary and Blade Dance and not take the full clear. I think you're right. I think he has to play the Shard Shatter really, but yeah, there's a lot going on there with Lapidary into Lapidary 2 turns in a row with the Warblades both times. Because sometimes here he just dies now.
Right.
Whereas the other way he'd be gaining significant amount of health and leaving up sort of 3 damage on board, which is fine. But he's taking the view that this is the only way he actually wins the Hearthstone game, which does make sense.
Yeah, I think I like it. And obviously you're swinging here, I'd imagine, as well. And then you have the 0-mana Warblades, swing with the Lapidary next turn. He just needs to survive this turn, which I think on average you can definitely expect to.
I want to Blade Dance this. I know it sounds ridiculous. The difference between 6 as 9 and 10 is pretty big. Maybe I'm just a coward.
Fair enough.
I probably am just a coward.
I mean, it had the upside of denying your opponent a card from their deck as well, right? With a Blade Dance that's a fairly unimpactful card, so I don't know, it wasn't the craziest thing I've ever heard. And you do have a lot of things to spend your mana on for the next few turns anyway.
I'm feeling that he doesn't Blade Dance twice in this game from this point on, so you might as well sort of use it to gain 1 health. That was all I was going with there. Yeah.
I actually kind of like that suggestion, the more I look at it. I don't think it's actually that bad.
Let's have a look how Surrender proceeds. He knows this is it. He kind of needs to win this turn or things start to drift away horribly from him.
They really do. He's obviously seen the 1 Eldraki Warblade, so maybe he's just praying it's in the bottom half of the deck, which is reasonable, of course. But it's going to quickly become obvious that he's going to be both falling out of range of killing Monsanto as he heals and also just dying in his own right on the other side of the field.
In fairness, I don't think Surrender's actually drawn that well either here. He doesn't seem to have ever got going. I know Rogue kind of doesn't have a get going, particularly in its name, but you know, lack of Edwins and that sort of thing hasn't helped him by any means here.
Yeah, I agree. I think he missed all the big ones, right? It was Edwin the Questings, and also Hanar is a deceptively big deal in the matchup to generate Misdirection, Noble Sacrifice, Ice Barrier, all those cards that just make it so difficult for Demon Hunter to close out the game.
Yeah, Noble Sacrifice is so ridiculously annoying because you feel that you should be able to do something about this ridiculous 1-mana Paladin spell.
Yeah.
And it's actually just really hard. Well, this is where holding onto the Blade Dancers may actually show that there was enough time to play 2. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, his line was like the standard one because I think you'll find a decent opportunity for both Blade Dancers later on. The main thing for me was just denying a card from their deck is pretty valuable, I actually think, and giving them a bad card in Blade Dance instead. Sounds good.
Okay, so Surrender finally picking up things that do things.
And yet, it's a little awkward. You know, with the Shard Shatter obviously having to go first if he wants to combo it with the Kobold to clear the Lapidary. That's one less buff on the questing. Questing plus just rolling Fireball, it literally always just dies on the other side.
And it feels way too slow. This rolling Fireball, you highlighted it at the time, is starting to look like a bit of a liability.
Give me a quest.
It's a tough turn, it really is, and in the end, it does make sense to just try and hide it behind that pawn to protect it for a turn. If it can survive, this is obviously fantastic for Surrender and is currently his main win condition, because I think he realizes more than anyone, this is slipping away from him.
We need to count the numbers here. 7, 10, 15?
Oh yeah, because of the game.
But are there any fragments in the deck? It's lethal with the Twin Slice instead.
Just with the Twin Slice. Yeah, he's got it.
Wow, just
fair play to you and all.
Absolutely nutty. Like, just from nowhere there. I think the Lapidary wasn't active, but it doesn't matter because the Twin Slice was drawn. And 1-0 to Monsanto, kind of out of the blue, which is how a lot of Demon Hunter matches end. It's just like, hey, I just beat you now. And that's what he's done. 1-0. No surprise, though. Surrender won't be overly disappointed. You lose with Rogue to Demon Hunter. It's kind of how it expected to go.
Yeah, kind of. I think that one's very close to a 50-50, like maybe slightly Demon Hunter favored, especially with the list that Monsanto has with the one Consume Magic, obviously to answer a blowout Edwin or questing at the start of the game. It's a nice win for him, though, getting the Demon Hunter out of the way. I think, again, given that we have essentially mirrored lineups now that the bans have come through, Surrender can expect to get a win with his Demon Hunter on the other side, most likely, given that he has the Mage and the Rogue on the other side to take a win against. So it's a win for Monsanto. It's nice to get, of course. But I think Surrender is still in a reasonable spot, assuming that he can get the same win on the other side with his Demon Hunter quite easily.
It looks like he has re-queued it. I'm almost at the stage now where I dangerously don't check the list, but there is a Penflinger in Surrender's build, something that Monsanto didn't have. I think the jury, for me at least, is still very out on how good Penflinger is, especially in Demon Hunter.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the new builds, though, because initially the substitute was Glaive-bound Adept, right? You'd stick in 2 Penflingers instead of the Adept and say that it would, on average, equal the same, if not more damage, actually, a lot of the time. Obviously, at the expense of not having a 6/4 on the board. But now he's gone for both, which, against the Secret Rogue, honestly, I think might be pretty good. Like, just being able to snipe off some minions along the way, even if it's not going for base. The Penflingers are pretty decent board control tools a lot of the time.
And for Monsanto here, I've lost track of which is the new build and which is the old build that is now the newer build, but he is playing the Underbelly Fence version of the Rogue, so a little bit more early game in there for him, or a little bit more beef in there, let's say, an actual minion of substance.
Yeah, I like this one a little bit more because the path we went on with Secret Rogue was initially it was Dragon's Horde and Vendettas but no Underbelly Fence. Then we cut the Vendetta Dragon's Horde package and now we've put it back in with the Underbelly Fence. And I think I like to either go one way or the other. I don't like the middle ground. If you're going to go with the Burgle package with Dragon's Horde and Vendetta, stick in the Underbelly Fence. Play to that advantage that it gives you as much as possible, or ignore it completely and just instead go with the plan of being more on the secrets, the questing, and the slightly more standard game plan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that in this matchup, this just has to be a good build. Like a 3-4 against Demon Hunter just feels like a good shape. It dodges all of the early tricks.
Yeah.
It might get a weapon in the face, but that's fine. That's 4 damage that didn't hit you. And I think planning for Demon Hunter in this meta, even if you're not targeting it, being aware that it is a deck that you're going to have to face a lot is definitely smart.
Oh, 100%. We've seen players consistently factor that in. I think it was well guessed that it would be the most popular archetype in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much. I'm always more surprised when we guess right than when we guess wrong, honestly, because the players are always trying to next level each other. But there isn't a good, sensible anti-Demon Hunter lineup available. Not a really good one. So you just bring the best deck. How weird is it that it's the best deck again?
It is weird. It just shows the power of Demon Hunter. It's always going to be the thing in Hearthstone, right? Is that when you have a deck that has enough damage to kill your opponent without attacking with a minion once, there's always something to that deck. You'll always be able to make something happen there, be it with Freeze Mage back in the day or Pirate Warrior with all the weapons that it could equip along the way.
Key moment here, though. Monsanto has to decide how much he wants to sink into this Edwin, and it's going to get consumed magicked. So the more he sinks into it, the better it is in general for him, but the worse it will be on this occasion. But I think he's managed to do it without really wasting anything other than a Shaman step. I think this is fine.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the way to go for Monsanto. If it's not there, 8-8 is not the size where it's automatically game-winning, but he would have just boosted his chances significantly in his favor. Consume Magic is there, though, however. The game gets to continue, and it's actually looking for what was such a devastatingly strong hand for Monsanto at the start. Surrender really seems to have rounded the corner here. As I call him Surrendo, which sounds like a new video games console.
Well, he only has the one Consume Magic, so Monsanto, just a glimmer of a wry smile. I think that's as close to emotion as we see from Monsanto ever.
Well, as I always say, who needs emotions when you have a hat?
It's a good hat, though. It is a good hat.
Very good hat.
Okay, well, he's drawn something he can do alongside his dagger. That's a start.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was kind of tempted by the suggestion of going Hanar just to, like, stick something on board that doesn't mean you tank 1,000,000 damage, because if they trade both of them in, you haven't just taken 4 damage. But I think the potential upside is that little bit too high with Hanar, so yes, in the end you do just save it, I agree.
I think because you're stuck with a stunner in your hand as well, you're kind of hoping to push your luck and get lucky with a secret, because so much changes that way.
That's reasonable.
I'm so glad we've seen the back of 1-drops in the Demon Hunter deck. Apart from Spirit Jade, which you have to play, of course. It all got a little bit silly for a while with people saying, hey, I can put minions in my deck that hits people in the face with weapons.
Yeah, it did get a bit silly, didn't it, with the sidekicks thrown in there as well at the end. Like, there were so many that were so powerful.
Like, if you're going to play that deck, that's fine. That's a deck you can play, but then just don't play this deck anymore. Play a deck with lots of things and just beat people up like you used to with Demon Hunter.
Sure. Actually, an interesting spot there, in my opinion, for Surrender to go for the Marrow Slicer over Kayn, because Kayn there felt to me like it had a reasonable chance of sticking around if you go face on that turn. Or I guess maybe even VT if you want to attack face again with the 2-1. But if they have Vendetta or Eviscerate, maybe it's that little bit too scary. So I'm okay with setting up the Marrow Slicer as well to prepare for the Blade Dance.
This is an interesting option here for Monsanto. It's not often this is even a call. You always kill the minion with your face, but damage is at a premium against Demon Hunter. Is your cat that good? Which one do you put into the 2-1?
It's actually quite tough, isn't it? Like, this 1-2 isn't doing much against the opponent's side, and it's not, your board isn't big enough to the point where it's protecting your other minions against Blade Dance. It just dies to a Shard Shatter. It was very close, actually, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in the end, I think Monsanto just went with what is good common Hearthstone practice, but he was well aware that there was another option available. And it may even have been down to the fact he has Noble Sacrifice in hand. It may have been that close that maybe he could afford the extra 2 that he wouldn't have taken had he not got that card in hand.
So I think if for Surrender, just trying to run through all the secrets that it could be in my head, it's only the one that was in the deck, obviously, in play right now. And I think Hero Power Mana Feeder into Blade Dance is good against all 3. Because obviously if it's Ambush, which it is, you kill it off straight away. You are over the moon about that. If it's the Plagiarize, you give them a Blade Dance, which is a bad card. And if it's Dirty Tricks, whatever, they're going to get the cards at some point anyway. It was, I think, just 100% of the time with all 3 secrets, a good order there from Surrender.
Now he just has this noble sacrifice, which Monsanto doesn't mess around with because he's going to use the stunner. Works out perfectly. Obviously, again, in some worlds he'd rather wait, but waiting's kind of done when you're down to 16. You're kind of into the end game already.
And as you were talking about, that pesky 1-mana Paladin secret is so scary right now. Because if he goes Hero Power plus the Shard Shatter, that's 10 damage that just did nothing.
Wow.
Or plus the Lapidary, sorry.
If you play Kane and you guessed wrong and it suddenly turns into a 3-1, you've ruined your Kane and you're then exposed to Titanic lackeys for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, you also have to be kind of afraid of eye for an eye. If you go face for 10 damage and you get whacked back to 16, that's a little bit scary.
It is. It really is.
But, I mean, at the same time, what if it's not Noble Sacrifice? It's really tempting to just hit your opponent for 10 here.
And he works it out. He plays it the safe way, goes for some board control measure. Well, not works it out, but he finds a compromise that makes it work well. You never know for sure.
I thought he was trading for a second there, and I was going to be like, no, Surrender. You are banned from trading in this spot. This is against Rogue. No healing, limited taunt. You've seen the last secret there, so you know that they're not getting Ice Barrier.
But look at this turn. The Titanic Lackey is available on the 1/4 coming up. And also 2 more. Ah, that's not a Titanic. Monsanto will know the odds of that one.
Oh, that could be, though. Does he know the odds on that one?
Probably.
Probably,
he seems to know all the odds affecting Titanic Lackeys everywhere.
Yeah.
But this is a big deal. This is very hard to remove without wasting damage.
Yeah, I mean, what, it's currently looking like Soul Shard Hero Power and then just smack into it. That leads obviously to next turn 5, 6, 7, 8. Not lethal damage represented quite yet. Monsanto does have to kill this in some way, be it through the minions he has on board, or as we can see, the rush minions in hand. But this is not over. I still think Surrender is in a pretty good spot right now because he has the Eldraki Warblades to heal, very importantly. But if Monsanto can pull a trick out of that secret passage, he might be in with a win here.
So I think you start off by trading in the 2/2 and seeing actually where you stand. And you've got to go a little bit quicker than this as well. You might have a lot to do this turn. Because you can hit another Titanic Lackey, you're in a really good shape.
That is true. That's true. It's a tough one. And he just starts with Secret Passage, not even trying to go for attacking in these rush minions.
Dragon's Horde, can that find him a nice little taunt?
Yeah, we're looking for Frostbolt now. Ice Barrier.
Oh,
he hits
like
the
that!
Frostbolt. That is a massive deal. My goodness.
It's so huge because now the Vendetta's active as well. It's just nutty. And Secret Passage, once again, oh my goodness, that's then setting up lethal next turn as well.
Mirazond as well is actually insane. Surrender, obviously, against Priest, you play around that. Less so against Rogue, though, in terms of stopping any damage being able to be flung right back at you.
And he just says 11 me. He's going to get the use out of the Mirazond by, if he doesn't die, he's going to be able to hit Surrender for like 9 or something, which would be lethal.
What is this, 9 damage available now?
I mean, yeah, I just made that number up, but it looks like it actually is 9. It might be 10.
Yeah.
But Monsanto last game trod the line really carefully to set up a chance to win. It looks like he's doing it again.
Demons.
Yeah, this turn I
7,
think
8,
you're
9 is-
equipping, getting the Warblades down, of course, healing back up to a much more healthy life total, but it's still scary.
It's going to be scary when he gets Monsanto.
So how does Murazon work? It just, I mean, obviously it plays a 5/5, but the only attack it gets is the 2/2 weapon, right? So,
So then you freeze their face as well.
He can go Murazon prep Frostbolt. Oh,
Oh
that's insane, right?
It is insane. He's been so
many.
unscared this game. Just like, okay, I'm going to go right down to what I think my opponent can't kill me.
Right.
And Monsanto's the sort of person who'll have worked key numbers out. Like, he'll know that a Demon Hunter with 8 mana can probably only do 9 or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
things that we just add it up as we go along. But he's very, very stats-based. He's done a lot of work on GM stats himself. Which is something I haven't said because I haven't been casting and I haven't had to say it, but he often checks stats with me in private. Not often, but occasionally checks stats with me in private. So he's been doing all his homework, and that's why he's at the World Championships. And I just feel that he knew that this was good.
Yes, yeah.
You think this is your time? It is mine.
A pretty insanely powerful turn. It's unfortunate that Surrender didn't play any attack buffs that can be copied by Murazon. But you know what? You'll take freezing your opponent, dealing all this damage to them, forcing them onto finding, what would this even have to be? Both the Blade Dance plus all the attack buffs, which he doesn't currently have access to?
Yeah, plus, for all he knows, Monsanto might have the other Shadow Step in hand. I think he's only used one. Just do it all again.
That would be insane.
8, 9, 10. How does he get out of this? He doesn't, right?
Well, so he can activate the Skull and then play Chaos Strike plus a 0 mana Blade Dance afterwards, which would be 6 damage AoE. So actually, even that doesn't get the job done against the Murazon. He has to go for it, I think.
Yeah, he's got no other play. And he's been noped.
No!
It's just a nope. And Monsanto did what a lot of people would call taking a risk, but actually just trod the fine line between living and dying perfectly here.
Yeah, I thought it was very, very good recognition of the actual discrete breakpoints that Demon Hunter can deal. It's very easy to let yourself be get very flappable and be scared into things that aren't actually realistic breakpoints. But he knew exactly what to be afraid of. And now with Step Murazon for lethal if he wants to be fancy.
Never has
or
a man
just
counted
lethal
to
on
16
board.
so carefully.
Yeah, already just has lethal on board. Fair play, Monsanto, not BMing him any further. I can respect it as well. But that does mean Game 2 going to Monsanto. And as I was saying just a little bit earlier on, the Demon Hunter getting the win in Game 1 was not such a big deal because we expected Surrender to get the win on the other side. But given that his Demon Hunter just lost, things are looking beautiful now for Monsanto.
Yeah, and this is where talking about Mage as not being that great, like it's 46-47% against everything. And that's basically, it's obviously easy to bring it down to this, but it's almost 50-50 and it gets 3 goes.
Yeah.
So that's where Mage can become really, I don't want to call it powerful because if you're under 50%, you're giving percentages away, but it's good enough as a last deck in your lineup for these situations.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I still think that Mage has got a lot to offer in the current meta game. It's easy to say that it's just bad against Demon Hunter, but it can pull itself out of any situation pretty much at any time. The problem is, of course, that the most recent nerfs seem to have directly punished that exact aspect of Mage, its ability to pull a win out of the hat in any situation. Now, of course, Evocation being 2 mana limits the amount of powerful cards that you can get to pull yourself out of a certain situation. Prime to 9 is a deceptively big deal, I think, in terms of shutting out those turns where you can wrestle things back, because the difference between turn 7 and turn 9 versus Demon Hunter or Rogue or whatever is a big difference. It really does affect things a lot.
My instinct on evocation is but it mainly affects the longer matchups like Priest, where you only get to do it maybe once in the whole game now, whereas in a half-hour tussle with Priest before, you'd probably get 3 evocations quite comfortably. But because you can't find them so easily anymore, I feel that you're losing a lot of value over those longer games as well. But yeah, the Prime nerf in the shorter games is going to be a big deal. And this particular matchup interests me greatly because if you watch Crane talk about it, he will tell you that this is free win for the Mage, which is completely against the grain.
I'm sure he would tell you that, but that's just Crane. I mean, you know, it's kind of to be expected, right? Crane grinds Mage all day on stream, as he has done for many, many weeks now. It's natural he's going to think he's favored against anything. He's one of the best players that we've seen pretty much over entire Hearthstone's history. It's understandable for him to think he's favored with Mage. For a lot of people, I think they both feel that they are less favored, and in actuality, they are less favored because they're less less proficient with the deck than Crane is. But Monsanto, I'm sure if you asked him, he would say he's in a reasonable spot here up against Surrender's Rogue, because I do honestly still believe it's a very close one. I was willing to concede that in my opinion, or in my experience at least, it feels slightly Rogue favored, but as I said, I'm one of those people that's a lot less good than Crane on the Mage.
I was comfortable that it was Rogue favoured up until the Secret Passage nerf. And I think that made a big difference in this particular matchup because you could pretty much guarantee to Secret Passage into just good stuff and win the game at one point. Yeah. But now, with only 4 cards, it doesn't sound a big difference, but you're not even comfortable to go for it sometimes when you would just do it without even thinking before. But this is the card that Surrender has to play at the right time, exactly correctly. The Neophyte.
Agree. Yeah, that is the card that a lot of players have been cutting. Monsanto is a perfect example. This one card, if you can get one or even both of them with a Shadow Step, can just lock the Mage out of the game. Because this kind of hand for Monsanto already, to me, is saying that it's saving up for something big. It's not just playing out cards every turn. It needs something more impactful already.
Yeah, and Surrender just saying, okay, well, Mage with coin scares me. Let's put a 3-2 on the board and not do anything, like, silly at this point.
Yeah. And I can understand what Surrender was going for there. I think usually you just play the ambush there and move on with your life, but given that he had specifically Prep, Secret, plus Miscreant next turn, he wanted to leave that combo alive and available for him, which I can respect.
Yeah, I'm already building up a pretty formidable start.
Whoa, this is now getting very tempting, actually, for a Sorcerer's turn. He could have gone for it right there with Coin, Cram Session, bunch of 1-mana spells. But I can also respect holding off for one more turn there, building up for, again, something that little bit even more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the longer you wait, the more stuff you can remove. It's one way of looking at it as well, when you're playing as Rogue in particular. They make all those like nonsense things, and you've got an Arcane Missiles in your hand. The longer you can put it off. But with picking up Shenvalar, this might not take too much longer before he starts doing stuff now.
It might not, but Surrender's got his own big, beefy 3-drop minion that puts a lot of stats on the board in Edwin, able to come down right now. The real choice being whether you go Kobold or Blackjack Stunner on this.
Don't let the door hit you.
On this Solarian. And I can actually respect going for the Stunner here. Not even necessarily to deny the Death Rattle, but just because Kobold is likely to be good the next turn as well, whereas Stunner probably becomes inactive next turn.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And also, like, denying the Death Rattle when you're about to play an 8-8, you think you're winning the game already, or in a very good spot. So it's more likely that you want to deny the Death Rattle when you're doing well. When you're doing badly, you don't really care if you get primed because you're doing badly anyway.
Is it cold in here?
So Monsanto right now obviously has the guaranteed single proc with the Shenvala. If everything goes his way, there is the potential for a double proc as well. If he can start picking up some premium one-cost cards, of which those are insane.
He only plays 1 natural missiles in his deck, which I think is normal pretty much these days, but this is huge just to get rid of this Edwin.
Obviously depends whether or not he can actually hit it, because it is not guaranteed with this board.
Well, Fans of all players, hold tight. Hold on to your straw hats because this is important. Bosh, bosh. Yeah, okay, hit it. Wispified your Edwin.
I don't even care that was kind of bad for him to hit it 3 times
Yeah.
specifically. It's just funny. Like, screw you in particular, Edwin. You are getting devolved back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, every time there's a round of nerfs, that's how people talk about it. It's like, do this, please, to Edwin. And he'd have taken that outcome.
Indeed.
Like, obviously, after the first one hit, he doesn't want it to hit again, but he'd have taken that if offered at the start of the shot.
Well, that's a big pickup, however, for Surrender. He really needed anything to spend his mana on, and Plagiarize, you know, even if it just makes Monsanto play a weak turn where he just plays 1 minion, maybe just like Ogre Magi, for example, you're fine with that. Just to be able to give them a weak turn and have something to play next turn.
Yeah, the Flame Ward's a pretty big deal as well that he's got sitting around in hand.
Choose soon.
True, actually, yeah, that is a big deal.
Because Surrender's out of stuff. And always find this interesting how you play around Plagiarize. It might just be play Flame Ward and pass.
That's a good point, actually. That would be a pretty terrible card for Surrender to have access to, and honestly a pretty decent use of your mana for Monsanto.
Do you
like
ping
it.
the 1/4? I don't think you do. I think you ping something else.
So as to not arouse suspicion?
Yeah, it's so obvious if you ping the 1/4.
Do.
It is.
But then do you care? If he's not attacking you, do you care anyway?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of interesting. I guess you might actually just ping the 2/1 because you have the missiles to follow up anyway. So a 1/1 sticking around on board is not an especially big deal unless it's specifically Witchy Lackey, which I think you can guess at this point it isn't.
What to
Yeah.
do?
That's my play for the turn. There's plenty of other options, obviously, that involve not playing a Flame Ward, but because this is a good chance this is Plagiarize.
Yeah. Interesting.
Runs out on me.
I mean, it's easy for us. We know what the secret is. He's got to actually play the Hearthstone game. But
So you know you pronounce it Plagiarize.
yeah, I always have.
Right, and do you remember how Reynad used to call spreading plague spreading plague? Do you reckon he calls it Plagiarize if he had to pronounce that card?
Plagiarize. Yes. Yes, I do.
I think he probably would, I agree.
Wings of evil.
Plagiarize.
Well, Dragon, the Skystalker looks like a pretty good card to go for.
Being distracted by random prattle in the caster Discord. They're all wrong, and I'm right as always. It's fine.
As always. Yep, Surrender still just managing to spend all his mana every turn, which, as the way the game is currently shaking out, looks like it might be good enough, honestly. I mean, this Flame Ward is good, of course, but unless he can deal with that questing adventurer beforehand, I think Surrender can just maybe even not attack face, deal with what's on board, keep juicing it up bigger and bigger and bigger, and then hope that that's enough to just ride him to victory on its own.
Yeah. He hasn't seen the natural devolving missiles yet, but I think he's had enough of the generated one. But there is only one, and there's 19 cards left in deck, so shouldn't be an issue. This, however, will be an issue.
So you can start testing for stuff, right? But the problem is, the way you test for stuff is kind of bad. Like, playing Dragon War Skystalker is awful, obviously, because then they would get their own one with Mirror Entity.
Yeah.
Attacking, like, I think you probably just take a couple of value trades.
You can
and then
also
you just not attack face.
It's difficult, but you can also realise he's had this in hand for a while and try and work out which ones he would have played last turn. You can eliminate a few, like Vaporize and stuff that would probably not Vaporize, like there's one or two you can eliminate. Trust me on this.
Yeah. Oh, it's really tough. Like, he's at 19 health. This extra 5 or 6 damage you get to push face is a massive deal. But at the same time, if it's exactly Flame Ward and you attack face, that might just lose you the game, because all of a sudden your questing can die. You're falling miles behind. This is really tough of a spot for Surrender.
I think he's going to do this, and if it is Flame Ward, he's going to play the Dragon. I think that's how it's working out. So at least he's still got something big on board. And then you lose the questing, sure, but at least you've got a 5/6 that's actually really annoying.
Fair enough.
Assuming they spend their resources killing your questing. It was just a good card, so he's made the best of a bad job.
Reached for the Wand Maker very quick there, but I was honestly looking at Ogre McGee and then go missiles and ping, just to guarantee yourself, or at least give you the highest chance of killing off the questing.
Ooh. Now what?
You don't pick the ones, see?
Okay.
That's how you do it. You don't need to make one with your spell wing. You just generate another one from Wand Person.
All right, there we go. That's gonna do it.
Got there.
I still kind of have my questions about that turn. Like, what was he really spending his mana on that was better than just going Magi and hoping that works? Like, it was obviously still far from guaranteed, but it stuck a 4/4 on the board, which is a pretty big deal at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I liked Your Way. As it happens, it may have gone wrong, but I do like Your Way better.
Give me a quest.
All right, what are we looking for? Bone Wraith is the absolute dream here, I think. Colossus of the Moon is...
It's Raven. Raven territory. Raven will tell us, is this good?
It's okay.
I mean, it's going to be hard to remove if he's still alive in 2 turns' time.
If it's still a top deck war in 2 turns' time, obviously it's fantastic. But it's not likely to be that at that point, which is when it starts to get very bad. Like, obviously a single Ray of Frost basically neutralizes it for the rest of the game.
Sure. Yeah, Surrender trying to work out... The reason he's so deep in thought is it's so... Each point of damage to face is gigantic here, but so is keeping a board. So yeah, going with the full clear, the arena mode play.
And now we're starting to find the power cards coming through for Monsanto. Mana Cyclone to generate more spells. Cyclone is a... Power of Creation is a huge deal. Prime for next turn is a big deal as well if this doesn't clear off the board. But it's going to have to do a pretty good job because honestly, right now, he's kind of just dying, right? He has the Prime, but because he got Brain Freeze specifically off the top, he might be able to survive till that point now.
Hot off the press, Raven says that Surrender wins now 100%, by the way, due to the Colossus.
Oh, that's decisively good, though. That one you will absolutely take as Surrender, and then next turn, Colossus of the Moon. Like, this can still get there if this Prime doesn't do the job.
And Prime, for all of its completely glorious brokenness, can sometimes just do nothing. Not that often, but I'm still salty about the triple Flame Ward I got the other day. Into some 9/5s that needed urgent removal.
Yeah, we've
it
seen a lot
can just sometimes do nothing.
It can, as we've seen in the screenshots on Twitter multiple times already. There are some other lines that can be looked at first. I mean, obviously as a baseline, it probably is Solarian Prime, but rolling Fireball plus Ray of Frost is like full mitigation on this turn. The problem is, of course, it doesn't stick a 7/7 on the board, which is a remarkably big deal at this point. So I think you just take the gamble with Solarian Prime and hope that he gets the job done. But I like that he's thinking about it first.
I think he's trying to work out what the card is in Surrender's hand.
Sure.
Like, what would it be? It's been there a little while.
Yeah, true.
What could it be? There aren't many things that it can be. Mummy is the obvious conclusion. Generous Mummy.
That's fair, yeah.
Is the first thing you think of. But Colossus is certainly high on that hit list. And if it is Colossus, you actually want to Prime now so you can Ray of Frost next turn, I think.
Ah, he is actually going with the rolling Fireball. I guess, to be fair, these Reborns and Death Rattles are mighty annoying. and very likely lead to a situation where something is able to attack on the following turn. It's an interesting play.
It's interesting to me that the previous 2 games in totally different situations. Oof. Oh, that's a joke. He was willing to go very low on health and come back because he knew his comeback mechanisms, but this game is the opposite. This game he's just done the whole I'm going to be safe in inverted commas play and not die next turn.
Boom! Colossus of the Moon, and now it is pretty indisputably Solarian prime time. That is not a bad spell, honestly, to get at this point in the game, just to deny any hits coming to face.
Yeah, we can see the hand, like, it's actually better than he might think he does right now. Oh!
Oh, no! Oh!
Solarian Sheep.
Oh, it was looking so weak up until that point, and then he hits the 50-50 at the end to win with the poly. Absolutely disgusting. Okay, decent draw though.
Yeah, just get a secret from the One Thief.
Well, he missed Fireball, which was step 1 in winning this game, obviously. The rest
That
of
would
these...
probably have been a little bit better, sure.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Like, Arcane Explosion can be used, obviously, to start mopping up this board. It even allows you to connect the dagger face, if that's much of a concern. But Power of Creation is a play next turn. Arcane Explosion, if you pick that, you're very likely just drawing nothing on the following turn of much impact. But can you survive? If you play Power of Creation, does playing to board even get there? Maybe you have to go AI just to connect the 1 damage and then hope that they have no answers to your board? I don't know, maybe you have to go Power of Creation and hope that you get like Argent Commander or Reckless Rocketeer just to push the extra damage.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. I'll be curious to see what he goes. He goes Power of Creation.
Yeah.
And just to quickly slide in there that Surrender's enjoying this. He's getting like quite handsomely beaten by Monsanto in this match overall. And he's played it with a smile on his face for nearly all of the game, just enjoying the glorious silliness of it all.
Well, we are seeing now the buff side of the nerf to Solarian Prime, which is now that it gives you 9 drops off of Conjurer's Calling, if you so desire. Which could be, obviously, you know, King Crush and the Absolute Dream to try and kill your opponent instantly. And, I mean, it sounds like a reasonable play to go for Monsanto.
Also showing here how good Surrender's last play was. Monsanto forced to freeze a sheep. Obviously, part of it is to get the One Thief in action, but just showing that he made possibly the right call there. If you're freezing sheeps anyway, you might as well have time for Power Creation, being my point. But lots more to happen on this turn for Monsanto. He's got to be quick.
Oh, he trades.
The eyes are watering.
It hurts. That one really stings, but I guess, you know, you're just saying you will win on the following turn, and I think it's reasonable to assume that you will.
Yep, and again, going so low on health and comfortable with it.
And that is, from what we can see, just game, right? He can't even stop the 1 damage. Oh no, sorry. He can survive at 1 health if he goes dagger into the 0-1 and then double trades the one thief.
So many options.
That's the play to survive at 1.
Sure. Can't see another play. Well, the other players play Power Creation and lose because,
Yeah, I mean, I guess you pray that your Wand Thief survives by some miracle, and then you get like a secret or a Shadow Step, and you can bounce it back with your Stunner or the Shadow Step.
He's got the bad news after all those attacks that this is almost certainly counterspell. He's under no surprise here. Just going through the motions, gives it up. Monsanto starts the tournament 0-1 and is now 5-1. Not only is he going to the World Championship, but he's proving a worthy attempt at World Championship.
I mean, honestly, that was just an absolute slaughter. We've seen this a couple of times recently from Surrender, where he's just been clean swept. The semi-final match at the end of Grandmasters last season against Tom 60229 was a massacre, to be quite frank. And we're seeing another instance of that here against Monsanto. I honestly, as always, I have little criticism, I think, for Surrender's lines that he was taking. There are a couple of things that I think maybe I would have approached a little bit differently, but his overall matchup understanding felt very, very strong. It was just the case that in a lot of his games, he kind of ran out of stuff to do, really, in all honesty. At the end of that game, he was just kind of top decking the entire time after not finding the secret passages. Monsanto obviously had plenty of stuff to do and comes away a well-deserving winner, I think. Just a very strong, robust game of Hearthstone on both sides.
Yeah, I think that second game where Monsanto knew all the break points with the Rogue against the Demon Hunter, just sat there on 11, I think it was, and said, "You've got 8 mana, kill me, go for it, good luck."
Yeah.
And saved the Frostbolt, saved the Murazon, drew the prep to play both in one turn. I think that was just a great game of Hearthstone, understanding exactly what was going on and pushing his luck a little bit to make sure he could win the game.
Yeah, I think so too. I just love to see it. I have very high expectations for Monsanto at Worlds. Obviously, I hold some amount of hope for Glory and Bank Yugi from the Asia Pacific region, but I think already from what we've seen today, Sif has been one of the better players. He's going to Worlds. Monsanto's been one of the better players we've seen. He's going to Worlds. I think what this all leads up to is no matter what happens here, come the World Championships in December, it is going to be such a fantastic tournament. And if Monsanto can go all the way to top 8 here, it's going to be a fantastic Masters Tour Madrid as well.
Agree entirely. And it's a fantastic round 6, and I'm sure everybody's waiting to see some more of it. So let's get a little bit more of that set up, and we're back in a couple of minutes with some more games from round 6.
없어요.
오늘의 운세라는 그런 항목을 한 번씩 찾아봅니다. 그래서 예전에 우승했을 때 그 운세가 굉장히 좋게 나왔어서 그 뒤로는 계속 대회 때마다 보는 습관이 생긴 것 같아요.
자고 일어난 다음에 한참 뒤에 게임하면은 약간 지는? 근데 뭐 그런 게 있는 것 같아요. 그래서 그랜드마스터 전에 한 1시간 전에 일어나가지고 준비해요.
I don't have any superstition because when first time I come to BlizzCon in 2014 and I come to the temple for victory, but I lose Slayer. So after that, I didn't come to any temple anymore. Yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Masters Tour Madrid Online. I'm Raven and joining me is Gia. We're going to bring you some more matches from round number 6 now that Lorinda and Derek covered match number 1. And Gia, we do have a bit of a crazy matchup, honestly. Euristus versus High 3. It's maybe less crazy because of the players themselves, but more because of the lineups they've chosen to submit, with Paladin, Face Hunter being involved in here, as well as Pain Warrior. We even see that Face Hunter being banned away from Euristus, so he doesn't get to play that in this series. But pretty crazy overall that we see yet again Hunter banned, Paladin banned. I don't think I would have called this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the fact that those two classes are present is off the wall, and now these two players are even banning them on mutual sides. I feel like Paladin is a class that we've been seeing some respect paid to as of yesterday. A lot of people realizing that in the hands of skilled pilots, it can be a major threat. But the Face Hunter ban is definitely not something I was expecting. It does generally, in my opinion, have a good matchup against Bomb Warrior, but I'm not sure quite how well it lines up against Demon Hunter. Some people also feel that it's favored against Priest, but High 3 definitely thinks it's big enough of a threat to just get rid of.
Yeah, honestly, looking at the rest of Euristus' lineup with Demon Hunter, the Pain Warrior, and the Priest as well, I do agree. I think these are the decks you're more expecting to go up against. Therefore, you're not building your lineup to beat Face Hunter, right? So I think it is more of, well, this is what was expected versus the unexpected Face Hunter. So just get rid of that, so it's not a problem. It doesn't just snipe a free win, and then play against the expected outcome here. But let's just dive straight into it. We are going in game number 2. So they're already Euristus 1-0 up, and it is going to be that warrior on the top, Bomb Warrior versus the Pain Warrior from Euristus.
Right, and this is a matchup that I haven't gotten to see that much of. We all know Bomb Warrior mirrors well by now, but this certainly adds an element of an X factor to the matchup now that the Pain Warrior has a lot more proactive options. They have minions that they actually want to drop on the board, and their big damage comes in one big go towards the end of the game compared to the Bomb Warrior that wants to get the incremental bombs throughout a couple turns.
Yeah, one benefit, because I've been playing some of this Pain Warrior over the last few days, one benefit I've found personally in this matchup is Blade Storm for the Bomb Warrior is actually really hard to get off as a good one, because your minions are naturally quite variable in health on board when you have it as the Pain Warrior. So that can be a bit of a bonus where it just makes that removal that little bit worse. But both players will plan on being fairly aggressive, and High 3 already off to a great start, just getting that Wrench Caliber equipped and starting hitting that base.
Yeah, I really like that point about Bladestorm, because not only are the minions highly variable in health, there are minions that just benefit from being damaged quite often, like the Bomb Wrangler, which is really tough for High 3 to potentially Bladestorm away. I do think that his most useful removal tools will be that Deathwing in hand and also the 2 Brawls, and he'll want to hold on to those for as long as he can, but still at the same time not take too much damage overall. Euristus with the early Ankar has that guaranteed nice card draw going. He has the Risky Skipper and double Battle Rages, so I could definitely see this turning out to be a game where he puts together a big burst of damage towards the end, but card draw can get a little bit scary if there's too many bombs in the deck.
Yeah, it's a tough line to walk here, because although you can set up big damage at the end of the game, I think really you need to have done something in the early to mid game as well, right? It's not like you can just, for example, now like 34, 35 someone out of nowhere. So there does need to be some pressure put down from Euristus. And an interesting addition actually to High 3's list is the sort of anti-weapon tech of that Kobold Sticky Finger, stealing a Scythe actually away, especially if it's it's not had its spell burst effect proc, could actually be a really big deal in this matchup.
Oh, sure. That's tons of extra damage that High 3 gets to put together. I think in terms of the two decks' posture in this matchup, I would say that the Bomb Warrior has to play defense for at least the early part of the game. And you could already see from Euristus dropping down the first Armor Smith without Risky Skipper is that he's not too concerned with trying to gain big amounts of health later on. And so every bit of extra damage that High 3 can possibly deny, like with the Sticky Finger on the Reaper side, could be a big deal.
Yeah, I think a card that Euristus has really been missing this game already is just that Warmaul Challenger. Because you play it, even if it's into nothing, and you pretty much say to your opponent, you kind of have to Bladestorm this, or kill it somehow. Because if you don't, then a damage effect and then, for example, Shield of Honor could be a big deal and makes the minion very difficult to clear up for the Bomb Warrior. So I think High 3 is getting off to a better start than expected by not seeing that Warmall Challenger.
Definitely. Euristus also had a bit of a difficult turn because he wants to keep that little incremental minion presence like you were talking about coming, but he also wanted to ideally save maybe some of these one-cost minions to go with his skipper turn because he's obviously trying to set up a Battle Rage or even just a way to get down the Blood Boil Brute as cleanly as possible. He decides to drop them down here because he doesn't think High 3 would want to commit a Brawl to that, and the Bomb Wrangler also made it a bit more difficult to go for a Blade Storm, and now if the hand space will allow, there must be some risky skipper turn here.
There will, but now I wonder if it's going to be slightly different with the Corsair cast draw. I think Euristus will want to make sure he uses that to get the weapon and not, say, Battle Rage into a Reaper Scythe and then still have Corsair cash in hand, right? Because that feels kind of bad. So I think I like this. And yeah, okay, we are going to see the equip and swing, just because, again, he will be at least aware of the fear of Sticky Finger in High 3's list.
Yeah, I definitely like that as well. Not bothering with trying to maximize the charges of the Ankar, also just wants to keep that hand space a little bit narrower so that he can get the skipper cycle going and really draw towards the Grom at the top end or even just the Inner Rages plus Bloodsworn Mercenary to make use of this Kor'kron Elite because he's reaching the mana soon where he's actually able to put the big pressure on High 3.
I think we might see he's going skipper now. Interesting, okay. I mean, this kind of does the job I'm about to describe, but I think the focus very quickly actually needs to be on getting an Armorsmith turn with Risky Skipper. Because he's getting pretty low, and although 24 doesn't sound low, when you can see how big that weapon is from High 3, how many bombs are already in the deck as well, it is just a little bit scary if these swings just keep going face.
Yeah, I think depending on what he would get off the Battle Rage, if it was a Grom Inner Rage type hand, then that gives him the license to be aggressive and put together that big damage over a couple of turns. But if he got Armorsmith, maybe you could have seen him try and leverage that for this turn. What I will say is I really love Euristus' order here. He goes for the Battle Rage before the Blood Boil Brute so that he can still get relatively clean clear here. It's just a little bit awkward, the last bit of health on the Krasnov there, because if he traded his Sky Raider first, then he wouldn't be able to afford the Blood Boil Brute. But I like that he went for the card draw to assess first before he committed to the Blood Boil.
And that's it, right? It just gives you the options. If you're drawing an Armorsmith, maybe he just banks 4 or 5 armor, has an Armorsmith on board, and trades with the weapon, right? Like these other options could open up from there, but just get the Blood Boil Brute down in the end, and now it's on to High 3 to work out whether or how much he needs to respect this board, because he does have so much removal right now. Just Coerce even would be, I would say, enough if he wanted to be really stingy with this removal.
Yeah, it starts to get scary because Euristus is now within range of Grom Inner Rage in terms of mana, so I really like that he went for the board removal. That doesn't mean that High 3 takes any damage. What is this? 3 bombs in a row drawn? My goodness.
Wow, he might just be dead.
And those were off of the Pirate Death Rattle, not even including his natural draw.
Yeah.
Euristus is at 10 cards now, gets rid of his second skipper, so even if he had the Armorsmith, it would be really tough to gain armor now. Oh man, does he have to commit this Kor'kron into the Deathwing?
Well,
Not even enough.
He could go Barov Warmall Challenger, right? And then still hero power. It's not fun, but it's something that holds the Kor'kron instead.
Right. Yeah,
and it saves the Inner Rage, it saves the Shield of Honor, he gets to hold on to like the game-winning pieces, or he could roll the dice with the Hench Clan instead and see what he gets.
Yeah, there's so many different lines because he obviously wants to get rid of the Deathwing, first priority, but ideally also just set up for a lethal on the next turn because he does have that Grom Inner Rage and Shield of Honor, which is 15 plus his weapon, 19. So if he can connect this Kor'kron face on top of removing the Deathwing, that's technically a lethal setup. But he can't do that while also healing out of range.
You have to commit an Inner Rage. Yeah, with the draw, he can't armor up and play the Warmall Challenger, right? So, going to be put down to what, 1 this turn?
Yeah, he needed to armor up just to survive from the weapon swing.
That's just it.
And that will just be the game. Even if it wasn't an immediate draw for lethal for high 3 there, I don't think Eurystis had an out. Even if he drew his second Inner Rage, having used the first one and not being able to connect the Cork on the last turn meant that he didn't have lethal on the follow-up.
Yeah, there definitely wasn't enough to even say if he drew Bloodsworn Mercenary, you know, to try and do a big Corcoran combo. There just wasn't the pieces there. So tough game there. And honestly, there was even just chances of getting that Lackey to deal the extra damage he needed going on there. So big deal there for high 3. Does manage to even it up, taking a win on that Warrior. But I will say that I think, at least in my experience, the Pain Warrior does fine versus Bomb, but that Bomb Warrior game from high 3, he had the Wrench Caliber, the freedom to swing. There was not a lot of early pressure from Eurystis, and then he just had the Crast enough to just keep the weapon going and push so much damage.
Absolutely. The real kicker there was just 3 bombs drawn in a row, which Eurystis was obviously not accounting for. He had a good 2-turn lethal setup, but the fact that he took 15 just out of nowhere, I think he could have accounted for maybe taking 5 or 10 in the amount of time that he had to set up. But the 15 meant that he couldn't get that one extra turn to connect the Corcoran face and set up the Grom lethal, which was backbreaking. But he did have that first win that was conducted off stream, so it's now just an even game.
Yeah, and now we are going to see a pretty odd take on this Control Priest, and maybe you could even say a dated take now with the Dragon package, but not in the form of the Twilight Drakes that we've been seeing recently, but with the Fate Weavers, the Shield of Galakrond himself. Like, that whole package is in this list for Eurystis, as well as that Mind Render Elusia. So a bit of an old school approach here. And we're going to see if it pays off versus Demon Hunter, because he isn't running Pyromancer in this list, which is more and more commonly becoming the way the Priest fights back versus the Demon Hunter aggression.
It's true, I would definitely favor the more modern Priest list to fight against Demon Hunter in particular. It feels like Eurystis was building his Priest list for a different matchup, definitely more prioritized. The fact that he's even still running Shields of Galakrond and Time Rip, it is just straight up Galakrond Priest from where I'm able to see it, and I do think that this maybe favors the mirror a little bit more and not so much the aggressive matchups, because it's less consistent in the burst healing it can get.
Do you think this opening hand from Eurystis, though, is good enough? Because it looks pretty okay to me with the addition of those 2 pennants.
It's going to be good for the early game, but I tend to think that from Priest's perspective, the incremental minion damage that they take at the start is not so much a big deal, to the point where he doesn't even want to waste the healing on the penances before he needs to. I think he's saving up to try and pair this with a Sethic turn. The real scary part is when the Lapidaries come down back to back, or just with a Marrow Slicer across 2 turns, and the Priest can only heal for, 3 per turn with a penance, and that's when the healing is just not enough compared to a Pyroapotheosis.
Okay, we'll see how it pans out. It does mean that, of course, with this build, Eurystis does have those Shield of Galakrond we've just seen him draw one of, which is additional taunt minions to help out to an extent. But honestly, Jay, I'm very interested to see when this Mind Render gets played, because Eurystis kept it. It's the only card he kept in his mulligan. So I've seen some amazing Mind Renders, and I've seen some, quite frankly, laughable Mind Renders in my time. So I'm very excited to see when Eurystis plays this.
For sure, I think the keep is super interesting, especially off coin, because whenever we see people drop Elusia early, it's usually just to snipe the coin from their opponent's hand and maybe another 1-cost card if they get lucky. I'd have to assume that against Demon Hunter, you'd want to play it post-Skull, but because the Demon Hunter has knowledge that there's Elusia in the list, they might be just prioritizing playing any cards they get off the Skull all on the same turn.
And here, high 3 taking a slower turn, I would say, which is fine. Demon Hunter doesn't have to just mindlessly go face, of course, but keep making his opponent also have a slower turn with the addition of that mana burn that turn from high 3. Means that even though he had to trade and maybe not develop a minion, not push as much damage as he would have liked, he does kind of even it up with getting that free turn himself, so I do like that.
Interesting choice from Eurystis to go for Thoughtsteal over the Penance. I guess he just doesn't see the Wand Maker as big enough of a threat to warrant one of his pieces of single target removal. Picks up a Soul Fragment from the Thoughtsteal, which is just 0 mana heal too. Not the greatest, but there's no reason for him to play it out this early, so he's just going to hold that knowledge back. For high 3, the double jump pickup can tutor him that ever so crucial Skull a little bit later on, now that he just has his Consume Magic in hand.
Yeah, High 3, one of the players still playing the Magtheridon list, which I'm personally a fan of, but in this matchup it's hard because the second they have death, all that work has just gone down the pan, so it just doesn't really pay out too well. Now, that double jump, I actually feel is going to be really clutch because there's just no card draw for High 3 at the moment.
Yeah. This is still a decent blade dance for him. Not the most ideal one. You generally would want to save that resource for more minions on the other side, but because this is the version that is Galakron and doesn't quite have that many consistent ways of sticking Apotheosis targets, I think he is just prioritizing spending his mana because he's absolutely locked up for Skull next turn.
There is a weird moment here where the longer he holds on to, say, for example, this other penance, if he chooses to say Breath of the Infinite and you know, maybe kill off this board, Demon Hunter doesn't always play minions, right? So suddenly there might be a chance where if the rest of the game is like weapon, swing, you know, and then the final swing is like lapidary to end the game, the penance might actually just be sat stranded in hand. They're pretty scary.
It's a funny point. I do think Demon Hunter, you can rely on them to play minions. Maybe not of the size that a single penance can deal with, but worst case for Euristus, he can just shoot his own one-cost minion that he generated. So
True.
I do like fitting in the hero power here because across time, that's more additional healing he gets. There's the Skull, though, and Eldraki immediately playable, but the 2 cards still in hand, so I wonder if Euristus will be thinking about an Elusia turn here.
Yeah, is there any particular punish for the Elusia? Like, what does High 3 get out of this deal? Gets to just play the Shield of Galakron, for example, just to put a bigger minion on board. Maybe plays the Cane out to just push some more damage.
Right, I think the Cane would be the thing he's least excited to give over to High 3. If you give them a Shield of Galakron, which doesn't invoke anything, I think you're pretty happy about that. I mean, it would invoke into High 3's hand because he also gets the deck, but then he likely wouldn't be able to play the minion, and it would return to Euristus' hand, so definitely considering the Elusia.
I will act as your scapegoat.
He's going to go for the shield. And that is very scary. You've just seen Skull. There's still cards in hand, one of which you know is a second slice. A lot. 17 doesn't feel safe. The way I'm looking at it, Gia.
Definitely not. Consume Magic also in High 3's hand right now, so if he wants, he can just remove the taunt on this.
Yeah, there's also just the play of he can just load up some soul fragments and then set up for the militia. Even if it's not for this turn, but for next turn, and then say, okay, as usual that you normally say to Priest, you pretty much need Soul Mirror or you're dead. At this point, even though there is some other AoE in Euristus' deck along the lines of that Breath of the Infinite, it wouldn't be enough on its own.
Yeah, that is pretty appealing. I think he's just setting up a board where if there is a Soul Mirror, he'll still have 1 minion remaining and has the weapon equipped. I think it's fine to go for it in this order. Definitely feels like the window for Elusia has closed now, if there was any window to begin with. Shadow Word Death and Holy Ripple is meager bits of healing.
Yeah, nothing feels good. I would actually be more tempted to Shadow Word Death and then play Cabal Shadow Priest, maybe? Oh, he's going to go this way, okay.
Maximum healing.
The ones.
And if he had time, this play would absolutely win him the value game, but there might not be enough time depending on what he thinks is in High 3's hand to follow up. The good news for Euristus is there's no Lapidaries quite yet. There is, however, a Militia push.
Militia. Yeah, no Soul Mirror right now.
Going ahead and
again,
just preloading the next Marrow Slicer as well in order for it to not have any chance of getting stolen from Elusia.
And it's showing up one of the weaknesses of this build for Euristus is, although he is playing dragons, he isn't playing the cleric, he's playing the Disciple of Galakron, so he's not had the opportunity to like fish for that Soul Mirror, which we see happen so often in Priest games, where they use that to say, oh, I've not got Soul Mirror yet, okay, chuck it out, whether the cleric is actually from the core or whether it's a raised dead one in the early game. They've got ways to dig, whereas Euristus just hasn't right now, and we're kind of back to the, I guess, old weakness of Priest, is that it doesn't actually draw through its deck quickly enough.
I think Euristus' only out here is to fish with Thoughtseal for exactly Soul Shear and Shard Shatter Mystic, something like that. Looks like he's going Elusia. And doesn't pick up a clear, and that, I believe, will be the game. Wait,
yeah, even killing
one.
one.
Magic and try to get Shard Shatter Mystic? Not it.
You have best.
Tough one there for Euristus, but we did just see the weakness of that version of Priest. And I'm not saying the Priest is a terrible deck or anything. It's just in that matchup specifically, no Pyromancer and no Cleric of Scales to dig for the key spells at the right times. We just saw the weakness hit pretty hard there. So High 3 is actually going to start to turn this around, and now he needs to win with his own Priest against Euristus' 2 decks left.
Yeah, that's huge. I do think in the mirror, though, Euristus Priest should be in a better position just based on the amount of value he can put together throughout the entirety of the game. I think if you're bringing this build of Priest, it is largely there to be able to have a good matchup against the more common Priests on the other side that are running a bit more removal that might not be as effective in the matchup. I will say, though, the more streamlined Priest list, even though it doesn't have that much minion generation straight up, it has spell generation, which is extremely consistent and can still find very feasible ways to win the matchup in the hands of an experienced player.
That's it. For me, they're both high-value decks. It's just different kinds of value, whereas this one, much more similar to standard at the moment from High 3. It does have some tech cards, the Cobalt Sticky Finger, the Ooze, of course, and still that Elusia included, but it actually runs, the Cabal Acolyte Wave of Apathy combo, which is insane. It runs the Cleric of the Scales to be able to fish for cards. Draconic Studies, which is, again, an alternate version of that value plan that we see come into effect a lot. So for me, personally, I still think this version of the list, maybe not with the weapon tech, of course, still plays the value game better. But first off, Gia, we are going to have to see how it performs versus this Pain Warrior from Euristus.
Yes, this is a very interesting matchup. I do like the Pain Warrior's position from my limited experience playing it against Priest, because you can have the time to build up the full combo from hand. I'm not completely aware of all the breakpoints when you're off coin, but he can easily just try and take maybe 5-10 damage off the Priest throughout the mid game and put together the rest of the damage all in one turn towards the end. So I definitely feel that the Priest needs to try and pressure in their own way.
Made to fit.
Yeah, and I feel like that's often the case, right? Even though the deck is deemed like a high value deck, the not only spell generation from, say, Sethic, Cleric of Scales to an extent, you understand, One Maker can be good to build up a board, but also the Dragon generation from Draconic Studies, Mind Flayer Kaj helping out with that, even Spellkin sitting on the board to maybe get more Draconic Studies. Like, there are abilities to build boards and push, and again, now we can mention that the deck is weapon tech. It is going to find uses in this matchup.
Right, Reaper's Scythe, definitely a premium target for the Cobalt Sticky Finger, but it's quite funny that even Euristus has his own Sticky Finger right now. We could just see the weapons bounce back and forth like the minions do in the Priest Mirror. For now, though, I think this looks like a pretty simple Karj turn for High 3. If he's scared of the Bomb Wrangler getting some immediate usage, he could go Holy Smite on it, but I don't feel that Euristus is particularly likely to go for a skipper on this type of board just yet.
Yeah, I don't know. A part of me likes the Holy Smite, but I can definitely see holding it just because it would cost the coin as well. And I think that's probably the thing that pushes you over the edge, because now if a Scythe is equipped, High 3 has coin Sticky Finger available to him, which I think is a little bit better than killing off this Bomb Wrangler.
I agree. Euristus, this hurts having to commit the Inner Rage just to get an additional draw, but his hand was really bad otherwise, and he now picks up a pretty good card to try and protect his main threat of the Bomb Wrangler.
Yeah, Shield of Honor is so sick. Like, when everyone went to Bomb Warrior, almost straight away within the expansion, it was so crazy. I think a lot of players were like, but Shield of Honor is insane. Why are we not playing Pain Warrior? And it's just funny that we've kind of gone full circle, or at least a lot of players have gone full circle back to this list.
Yeah,
it's just a 7-2 with Divine Shield.
Just quite an a headache for Euristus here. I'm trying to figure out if there's some pyro clear where you get rid of the shield and the bomb and then Holy Smite. The Bomb Wrangler, it looks like it would involve just using the inner fire straight up, and it also has some failure rate where if you start with that, the bomb can just kill the pyro before you get to play the any other spells.
I think as well there is just Holy Smite trade, right? I think that's just a simple way to deal with it, at least initially, and then there can be follow-up whichever way you want to put it there.
Yeah, I do think this is the more disciplined line for sure. He holds on to his best resources in hand and gets to develop the Chrono Breaker as well.
Ooh. This looks unfun for Euristus right now. Are we going to see the terrible feeling, just hard cast cutting class?
It could be. I'm feeling this could be a Barov turn, perhaps. Just because his
that's
minions
true with
don't
the two
really,
bombs.
Get hurt that much by the Barov effect, and it gives him some cleaner trades on the other side. In terms of what you would rather hold Barov for against Priest, I can't think of any particular card other than Murazon, and if they are able to land a safe Murazon, I think he's already behind anyway, but
Yeah,
he is just going to go for the hard cast.
Yeah, I think the reason here is this 6 damage isn't really the end of the world. Even if Apotheosis comes down, the game is still very early, so it's not like Euristus is setting up lethal anytime soon. So if the board gets bigger this turn from high 3, then Euristus just has Risky Skipper Barov. Like, no matter what, right, he can clear it. And this does the annoying bit earlier, while he's taking the least amount of damage, which is hard cast the cutting class. So I actually like this order of way to do it here.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind it. My concern was just that if you leave the Bomb Wrangler alive for another turn, it just spawns another bomb. And so the Barov clear would end up still having a bomb on the other side, at least one. Even if it happens on the next turn.
Right. Yep, the bomb trades.
Oh no, 1 damage on the Wrangler? That is terrible. And he can close with just a hero power, I assume. I like this, healing up the Wrangler.
Yep, just builds the strongest board, and now I don't know if he can just play cutting class again, so I think he is going to be forced into this Barov turn. I think this was the expected outcome from Euristus' point of view, unless he drew something really impressive, right? Like, I don't really know what that draw could have been, but unless he drew something that's crazy, I think this was going to be expected every time. And high 3 just can keep going now, especially with that Sethic pickup along with Renew. Looks really powerful.
I like that little skip on the hero power from Euristus because he knows where he's at low enough an armor total where he can get down to somewhere like 29, 28 that you don't miss the 2 damage that you the 2 armor that you miss, because he wants to activate the second battle rage at some point a bit more efficiently. If you were, say, at like 8 armor already, I would just say push the button. There's no way you're getting within battle range, rage range.
High 3 going for the Draconic studies there, sorry. Interesting. Again, maybe I do this too much, but I think I would have just picked up the Soul Mirror. It's just a hard answer to any of those Blood Swan Mercenary boards that sometimes the Pain Warrior tries to make, whether it's with Blood Boil Brew or Warmaul Challenger. Like, the Soul Mirror on boards like that can be quite powerful.
I take your point, but I think that High 3 is in a position here where he has this window to start developing and pressuring against Euristus. He's seen a hard cast cutting class. So I think he had a pretty good read that Euristus' hand was not the blisteringly fast type or the type that puts together big threats in the near future. And the evasive Draconid could be a bit backbreaking here for sure.
Yeah, for just a second, because of what High 3's hand looks like, I was wondering the implications of Mind Render that turn. You can tell your opponent's kind of scrambling for something to do. You just saw the card draw come down. I did wonder if there's ever a reason to just switch hands and then try and just blow some cards out there.
Definitely worth thinking about, but I think if he gives the Draconid to Euristus, that is just a good response on the other side, even if it's the only thing that happens.
That's true.
Because you can see how much of a headache it is for Euristus here. None of his minions able to attack this turn, so the Shield of Honor it can be used preemptively here, but he could just be accepting that he's going to take 7.
Yeah, I did wonder whether there was ever a reason to try for an athletic studies there, because he does have inner rage as well, to maybe get there. But he would need some very specific minions to be able to even play anything at that point.
True. So the Pyros look tempting here, but the Sethic being on 1 health means that he'd have to commit this heal before he starts going off.
Yeah, I think it's more likely just does penance or something, right? Like, he doesn't need the pyro to clear. He just wants to cycle Sethic spells. And penance looks way better here. He can hold on to the pyros for now.
Yeah, gets to snipe the steal on the Cabal Acolyte as well. Very, very clean.
Takes the Armor Smith for himself, and this board's just getting more and more difficult to deal with.
Yikes. Euristus can take a turn of setup if he wants with the Reaper Scythe and the Greenskin, I suppose. That's a way to finally get rid of the Evasive Dragon.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I think he wants to do a spell, doesn't he? Because so he can actually cleave this turn and kill off the Armor Smith as well.
Yeah, but if he cleaves without buffing, then the Draconid survives at 5 HP, right? I mean, at
right,
1,
but if he does this, he's
5
likely to get a rush minion to just kill it off anyway.
Sure. So Kargath would be my first instinct here.
I think so, yeah. It's just playable now, isn't it? It's just simple. The second Athletic Studies can, if you're going to play Kargath, arguably be played for free, so to speak, because it does reduce, it does stack, of course.
Does he have time for Batterhead? That could be very sick for the next board, because it feels like this cleave is still going to leave up a little bit of damage, but he's going to go with the Fishy Flyer.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I like using that over the Kargath there. They're very close to the same minion, and don't you want your Kargath to be, like, definitely be dead? And in your deck where it's marginally safe versus Priest, and, like, if you go, okay, Kargath can value trade because he's got 1 extra health, great. Then the Priest steals it and has a Kargath Prime in their deck. Like, is that really what you want? I don't know.
That's a fair point. I think I would have gone for Kargath there myself, too. Euristus, however, does have finally some stability, and High 3 is running out of efficient threats, but he does have the prime Sticky Finger target at the moment.
And I like it because knowing that your opponent also plays a Sticky Finger, I think for High 3, if he plays his and swings, and then his opponent spends 5 mana just to get it back, and only has 1 swing on it, obviously he doesn't know about the green skin, I think that is almost just a win for High 3, right? It's so much mana for Euristus when he's the one under pressure, and he's the one who needs to try and make something happen soon because he's running out of cards. It is a combo deck, so it means that also means that he's got the combo pieces or getting to the combo pieces fast, but he's very behind right now.
Absolutely. I also like that High 3 just committed the 2 Pyros essentially as Bloodfin Raptors here, because he knows that Euristus really wants to play Sticky Finger, but if he does that, he only has 5 mana left to deal with everything on the board, which is a big ask, a really tall order, and he is struggling with that exact problem right now. So there's something like Kargath second Reaper Scythe Athletic Studies here for the cleave effect.
Shield of Honor, right? Or it doesn't have Athletic, you use them both, yeah. You can go multi-Kargath.
That's pretty sick.
It is, but I think he needs the cleave. I think he needs to hit one of these Wild Pyros.
So if you go for the cleave and hit, you end up taking damage from 1 minion plus the 1 remaining, right? So if you go for a double copy on the Kargath, you actually still just take damage from 2 minions the next turn. The board is less neat, but he gets to shuffle all those Kargaths.
Yeah, that's the different path, right? If he goes double Bloodsworn Mercenary, he's used 2 Bloodsworn Mercenary in his combo damage deck, right? Either way here, wow, this just means he needs 1 damage. I'm not sure I like that at all as the outcome. I think there was a halfway in between somewhere, and that switch is going to give him a Reaper Scythe, an Inner Rage, pretty much anything he needs, and that means High 3 is going to take this game and take this series. That looked a little bit messy towards the end for me, Gia, but congratulations to High 3 getting the win.
Yeah, for sure. I think Eurysis was in such a tough spot trying to balance the two things we were talking about, like can he afford to go down to a little bit of HP? He knows that there's no natural burst in the priest deck. It would have to be Elusia or some copy card from his deck in order to deal the lethal that very turn. And obviously he wanted to hold on to those mercenaries because they unlock all his damage in the late game, but maybe just getting a little bit too brave there towards the end. I will say that was very cleanly set up by High 3 though. Just from the very beginning, I loved his pick on the evasive Draconid. I think that one dealt so much damage and allowed him to go for this aggressive game plan as the priest.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty well played, and it was one of those, I would say, slightly harder priest games where you don't have a ton of resources, so you've got to make the ones you've got work. But we are going to cover some more matches for you and some more games, and we are going to have Blaze versus Fury Hunter. It looks like both players are at 1-1. Warrior and Priest banned away, and I don't know how much of the European Grandmasters you watch, Gia, but just based off Blaze, we're probably going to be having a fairly quick series no matter what the outcome is, even though Fury Hunter's playing this control Shaman.
Oh, actually, Raven, I only watch Blaze in Europe so that I can just have a nice, quick 2-second match and then have my content for Mullet over just like that.
It's honestly been trying to learn a new style of casting for Sol and I when we're casting Blaze, especially versus one of the other fast players, because Hearthstone becomes a play-by-play game, which is very, very strange when this guy plays. But he's going up against Fury Hunter, who is choosing to bring this kind of, honestly, just strange lineup. There's the slower warrior, like control warrior, actual control warrior in his build. There is the slower priest with the sticky finger tech, the anti-warrior build. There's obviously this shaman, which I can't believe is a good deck, but I guess we'll see. Fury Hunter is 4-1, but then he just has like paladin in there as well. It's super strange.
I'm still willing to see this as an anti-bomb warrior lineup. I think in terms of what we saw from Grandmasters, people were getting on the Galakron Warlock plus Druid train instead of Paladin and Shaman, because I don't think the Shaman is that consistent, at least in its previous iteration, in beating the Bomb Warrior. But I think this might be the lineup of somebody that still wants to play anti-Bomb Warrior, but knows that some of the Bomb Warrior players are teching in Chef Nomi, which can just completely destroy Druids. But Shaman has a way to deal with Chef Nomi with the schemes in there. I don't know if I like the logic, but it's pretty brave, and to be fair, Fury Hunter has gone 4-1 so far.
And from my experience as well, the Shaman's actually just not bad versus Demon Hunter, so maybe that's the splash, right? It's actually just a better lineup versus Demon Hunter as well. But we'll have to see. Anyway, this is not the matchup. This is Shaman versus Mage, and we are going to see a pretty good outcome there off that portal. Wow.
That's the sickest Mage Hunter I've ever seen. With the healing totem, it still challenges the two minions on the other board and just deletes an arcane missiles from Blaze's hand.
It's a pretty huge deal, and already Fury Hunter is, I would say, safely getting to his power turns of like 6 onwards, I would say, for the Shaman list. And although everything can go wrong with Mage, of course, this Shaman list, I just want to put out some cards. There is the one card I absolutely love, which is the Fist of Raden, which is in his hand now. But
I'm glad you brought that up, because we do see Fury Hunter building up towards his quote-unquote power cards, but if you think about how much damage they actually do to the mage, it's not very much. He has the Wind Fury minion, which can just get frozen. He has Groundskeeper, probably just takes 1 or 2 spells for the mage to remove, and a bunch of reactive cards. And I think that mage has the time, even though their first board gets cleared, to build up value and win in that matchup that way. But Fist of Raden can change that, because that can actually put significant threats on the board.
Yeah, even in that though, I'll confess, I haven't played or cast this matchup that often. I'm just being honest. But when you look at, okay, Mage doesn't win the early game because we're past the early game, I would say. There's no big blowout turn yet, right? So the late game, as you mentioned, the loads of resources, the repetitive big boards that Mage can make. Well, there's 2 Hagatha's Scheme, there's Tidal Waves, there's Earthquakes. There might actually just be enough in this deck to actually clear up even the late game Mage pushes here. I'm pretty excited to see how this pans out.
My gut instinct is to dispute that theory, but the last time I played this matchup was when Evocation cost 1, and it was much easier to generate multiple copies of for Mage, so maybe there could be some truth to that. But we do see Blaze ripping the first one because he didn't quite have anything strong to do for this turn. Ends up with more generation, which is the most important thing. Primordial Studies is absolutely huge. Now his Solarian Prime is unnerfed and playable next turn.
The power of Blythe, he just does what he wants, even if it means unnerfing cards on camera. It's happened.
Problem
So
now
many
for Fury Hunter
resources.
is his best activators for Fist of Raden blow up his own board.
I mean,
I could see a line where he goes for Tidal Wave, honestly. It still has 2 minions on his side surviving.
I think he could
would
just
have
play
to start with
Sticky
a coin
Finger,
for
right?
that, though.
I think I like Sticky Finger here. It's not really got targets in this matchup, so just chuck it out there. He's still winning board by quite a margin. I think he doesn't have to rush with these spells quite yet.
I have become one.
And here we go.
We go. Starting off with some secrets, value generation, AoE, the perfect mix of everything he needs. That is a Blythe Prime right there. All insane outcomes.
Yeah, just does a good, solid job. Does what you want it to do. Fury Hunter now has his answers, though. He can check the secret again with the coin and then go for an Earthquake. Now, has camera shake been turned off? No, it's not. Some of the 7-drop. Only, okay. Now he needs to wait to bounce this back into his hand somehow, and then we can really start playing a game.
That's so funny. It fits with the flavor of his deck, but it's such a terrible minion. And here we can see Blythe starting. The real power of Mage in the matchup is that you have so many ways to build boards like this, which a lot of the cards didn't even start in your deck. But by virtue of them just being able to stick for incremental damage every turn, Fury Hunter has to expend one of his actual cards to deal with them.
And I wonder if this is the Tidal Wave turn. It cleans the board up nicely. He knows the secret is not counterspell, so he can hardcast it anyway. And, no, even better, he gets the secret out the way, and then he just gets an 8-drop, which is huge.
Sorry, the 7 damage Flame Ward killed me. There's just so much damage, spell damage on the other side. That's pretty funny.
Oh!
But Raven, that's not an 8-drop.
You just can't beat Blythe. That's just the way it is. These things happen.
He has 9 total stats on the Natalie Celine. Might as well be a 5-drop and completely fragile. That is a disaster for Fury Hunter because I was looking at this Fist of Raden as his one shining ray of hope to be able to close out the game early enough. Now it feels like he has to take a true control posture. There's still a couple more charges on the Fist, but I'm skeptical to think that it could get there against this big refill from Blythe.
Right, and this is the trickier part of the game now, is when, as the Shaman, you have to sit there and think, is this worth a scheme because I get a 5-drop? Is this worth, you know, an Earthquake so I build a stronger board or not? It's quite difficult. I will say, though, there is still the diligent note-takers in Fury Hunter's list. So if he's holding onto these big resources, he can potentially, at least for the Witch's Brew maybe, just get like a ton of healing if it goes to fatigue, but that is a big if right now.
Yeah, it certainly feels like he has to win in Fatigue, which is such a big ask against Mage because, again, they can generate so many cards that did not start in the deck. Caligos being huge for even more value generation. The minions that Mage can generate even more spells, and the spells too. And so that's why Fury Hunter went for the Galakron as soon as possible, so he can start pressing that hero power to somehow compensate for the cards that he's not able to actually run in his deck.
We go for the Revolving Missiles. He needs this to just reduce the health down a little bit, and it does the job. Reliquary of Souls coming out from the Fist of Raden. Earthquake could be a good follow-up, but maybe overkill, and this is what I mean. I think it's really hard to actually get a good judge of when to use these big, powerful AoE removals.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a good enough board for him to just hold on to the AoE. He has health as a resource to play with, especially with the 2 Witches Brews in hand, so I like that he's holding on to the Quake. I think the Reliquary is low-key pretty good, like one of the best 1-drops he could have gotten, because that's more resources for him.
It's the only 1-drop he could have gotten.
Right. Legendaries only.
This now is one of the worst Conjurer's Callings I've ever seen, but there is still a way for Fury Hunter to clean this up if he wants. And again, is he going to hold on to these spells instead and use this Walking Fountain?
Yeah, the secret is scary, right? If he wants to go for an AoE clear, he has to potentially test with the Witch's Brew. And because of that uncertainty, he is just gonna start picking apart the board with the Walking Fountain instead. He knows that there's the other half of Conj in hand, but maybe he just wants to expend that resource from Blyze's hand and then commit the AoE. Trying to win the long game here.
And again, not the most mind-blowing Conjurer's Coin once more. Decent minions, but only stats-wise. No death rattle, no big effects or anything like that, right? So again, Fury Hunter at least getting the best of some of these Conjurers here. Being okay, wow, that's pretty good as well.
Okay, gets a lot of information with that Devolving Missiles test. Now he is free to go for an AoE spell if he wants, but it looks like he's going to hold on even further. He is absolutely being greedy with these AoE spells, and that certainly, I guess, would indicate that's the way you win the matchup. Shaman has very limited ways of dealing with the Mage's board because they have, I mean, even though they run a bunch of these spells in the deck, they have very limited card draw, so the amount that they actually get to see by the time Mage chains their threats is limited. Missiles, this could be a Raz turn depending on how the missiles land, and of course they land perfectly because we're talking about Blyze here.
It kind of right. He still wants to push the damage, so I wonder if he just uses the icicle instead. He's just gonna pass, okay.
Yeah, I think this is fine. Doesn't want to waste resources for the Shanvala that he is likely to use as his next push on board. Knows that his current board is very likely to get removed one way or the other.
And now you're starting to see the problem with Shaman. Okay, it can heal for 1 million. Okay, it can remove kind of 2 boards-ish, depending on the board size. And that's the whole game plan right now for Fury Hunter. You can't actually really proactively do anything.
And you can see in contrast to the Mage deck, where even though Blyze has been, you know, at first glance running out of resources, pretty much all of his top decks give him more things to do. Some of them draw him towards the big combos, but even a single Wand Maker, you can see they're generated Fond of Power. Fond of Power generates Jandis, and that's just another round of threats.
I will say, and this might just be one of those times where it feels like it's getting close, but it's just not. But I'm going to say it, just so I can look stupid soon. It feels like Fury Hunter's getting close, though. 7 cards left for Blyze. The Prime has been used. That's been done. Yes, there's a Jandis. The Pyroblast, I'll say, is pretty insignificant because of these Witch's Brews that you can get. So...
First time in history you're not excited about Pyroblast, but I agree. It's going to be a while before that gets there. But the thing is, the problem with Shaman is that if you just stick a single threat like this 5/5, Blyze, if he doesn't choose to commit any further, Fury Hunter will not want to play the scheme on a single minion, and Blyze can just keep getting the incremental damage. So Blyze does end up committing the Jandis, but I think that's largely because he drew this Mana Giant. So he knows that there's still another round of threats he can put down if he sees the next AoE.
A timely Hagatha's scheme. It's getting tough, though, not having access to these Diligent Note Takers early in the game, or even at all so far, unless I blinked and missed it. It's been a bit of a problem for Fury Hunter. Getting those extra use of the spells is actually normally pretty huge.
And the second scheme was drawn super late, so some hesitation about using the first one, which is pretty much clear any board that Blyze can put down. The second scheme, though, is going to take some time to juice up, so he'll be hoping that the next Mana Giant is not there yet. Oh my gosh, the other Jandis, too.
Hey, at least Scheme's good versus this one, to an extent. Not the worst card versus Jandis. A little bit worse now as a Mana Giant on the board, of course.
Yeah. And the Alar can't be underestimated, too. That is just
ooh, here we go, though. Instructor Fireheart.
Okay, speaking of infinite value.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
I think you would have wanted the
trade.
Tidal Wave, but you obviously can't just pick it.
Right. You wanted to maximize the usage he can get out of the Fireheart, and I guess you would just go with Lava Burst to get rid of a minion here.
I was even looking at Ancestral Spirit
going.
just because it's cheap.
Okay, that works too. Oh, with the Rush minion, that's very clever. I didn't see that. Like that a lot. And then end with devolving. Yeah, super clean from Fury Hunter. Oh!
Wow, okay. Well,
What do you know?
that's
I don't know the
scary.
name of that card, but that just generates more minions, right? Oh my goodness.
It's
If it weren't
Hydra
just
Man.
lethal.
Yeah, that is going to be the game. The Pyroblast did end up getting there, as this Shaman is wont to do. It kind of just ran out of stuff, and there was just about enough there with the help of an additional Jandis from Blythe taking that victory in a bit of a weird game. I am glad we got to see some Shaman just to see how it's performing, because although it looked pretty bad in that one game, Fury Hunter's 4-1 right now. Like, he's been doing well with his lineup so far, and I imagine that's not really the matchup he's even bothered about with this Shaman, so we will have to see how it goes. But this is one of the pitfalls of this kind of lineup for Fury Hunter. He's playing against someone who isn't bringing Demon Hunter or Warrior in their lineup, and this is where things are getting tricky.
That's right. I think you mentioned the 2 archetypes plus maybe Weapon Rogue that Fury Hunter was trying to target with these decks, but it's just not there. Blythe's Rogue is of the secret variant, which I think can generate just the same amount of resources that the Mage can and present similar problems for Shaman. The benefit, I suppose, for Shaman is that the Rogue doesn't necessarily create too many extra minions compared to spells.
Yeah, it's just going to be another one of those weird matchups where, honestly, until I watch it, I have no clue how Secret Rogue will win, but I'm pretty sure Secret Rogue will win, right? Like, it's like the Secret Rogue versus Priest matchup, where you can get those crazy late-game scenarios, or they can just kill him with a questing early on. It's very, very strange. But again, we are going to see this Shaman take to the field and see if we can get the job done.
The Secret Rogue has many avenues to victory, and the Shaman is very much at the mercy of the Rogue player in deciding how they want to allocate the resources. Because the Rogue, like you said, it's free to go about their original game plan of going for questing or Edwin, hope that it sticks, but they can be greedy with the other resources. Like, for example, just saving Hanar for a full secret turn in the late game to milk all the value out of that, and every single Pharaoh Cat Jandis that can be stepped and create another X factor is a variable that the Shaman can't account for.
That's it, right? The greed potential in this matchup from the Rogue side is huge, because you know you're just more often than not going to get beat up, right? It's just not going to be a factor.
Just has all the time in the world. It is just Fist of Radan that really presents a possible threat of getting pressured the other way. And when the Rogue has time, we could even see these crazy scenarios like that one Bunny Hopper match where he had the Shadow Steps with a generated Lady Liadrin. That can theoretically be something that the Rogue can achieve because they have so much time in this matchup.
We just see a good old Magma Rager hit the board.
So many Ragers, but of course we spawn the vanilla classic one. Oh, Wazaki? Oh, he doesn't run Eviscerate, does he?
You can always make one. I go for Dragon Rider.
Just the cheapest card in hand, I suppose, and he can generate dragons.
Yeah,
just
that's
like
a good
that
point.
One.
Flyers, as always, instantly sees the lines, saying, of course you pick this, because I'm just going to get a dragon.
I love it. He even picks up Conjurer's Calling to ultimate greed options. Fury Hunter. If he could have all the cards in his deck in his hand right now, then I could get behind the idea where he could outlast wave after wave, but he's just not going to be able to draw as consistently as Blythe does.
And this is also another factor we've not really touched on in this matchup, is the Shaman deck has so many like powerful, massive board sweeps. It doesn't really have good sweeps to actually kill boards like this, right? Look at this, a Torrent on a Miscreant. Like, yes, Tidal Wave clears boards like this, but it also costs 8 mana. Like, there's no Lightning Storm style effect, right, available in this deck, which actually cleans this up. So even these small boards from Rogue will start chipping away some damage, and we can see that right now.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up, because theoretically, even just a Paladin that makes a dude every turn is going to be problematic for a Shaman deck like this, until they get their Galakron online and can 1-for-1 little minions. They don't want to spend these big AoE cards on the threats that Blythe is pretty much happy to throw in there as cannon fodder.
Now, very early coin into Wing Guardian here is going to be a bit of a problem. Again, does this require a big AoE? Does this require something huge to deal with? Kind of, because you can't just take 1,000,000 every turn. But look at his hand. It's Earthquake, Walking Fountain, the Tidal Waves. All of these just don't feel quite enough.
Right. He is just going to set up for an Earthquake clear on the next turn. And Blythe is going to go hunting for those counter spells. That would be the real backbreaker here.
Yeah, he didn't get it first try, does get it second, but of course does not have the mana to play it this turn, I think. Oh, he wants the re-roll, okay. Okay, gets Counterspell offered again, fine.
Yeah. I'm kind of into stepping the Hanar here.
Yeah.
So much value. He hasn't even used the secret passage yet, and we haven't even talked about the Dragon Rider Tower.
Right. This Tidal Wave doesn't even kill off the Winged Guardian.
Yeah, painful. I guess he just wants to save Earthquake for a turn where he can fit in the hero power too, because honestly his hero power is his only value engine.
And the thing as well is,
no way I can see that contending with the Hanar.
Right, there were 3 minions on the board as well, which means it's a reasonable outcome from Tidal Wave, so it heals for a lot, because that's the thing as well, of course, it has lifesteal, which is why it costs so much mana, but yet again, just this board is going from bad to worse, honestly, for Fury Hunter.
Yeah, and the counter spell is the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it's getting close to just a force concede, even the Noble Sacrifice defending the Reborn effect. Oh.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Just added damage to Blythe's board.
But again, I will say, although this looks, people are, oh, why is Fury Hunter bringing this bad deck? What's going on? How is he even doing well? Well, he's facing opponents that have Demon Hunter and Warrior, probably, and Blythe doesn't. And I think that is it's a risk you take with a lineup like this, and you are, in a massive Swiss such as this, you are going to run into the odd player that isn't running your expected lineup that you were expecting to face. So it does look, I think it looks a lot rougher than it has been for Fury Hunter in this tournament so far. But again, it's the benefit of going against the grain here for Blythe as well, and just not playing the 2 of the most popular classes we have in the tournament right now.
That's right. Blythe is a created by gamer, and that's exactly the type of deck that the Shaman can't contend with. Shaman, in theory, can go 30 for 30 and outlast Bomb Warrior, because that's a deck that doesn't generate any additional cards, and also Demon Hunter, they just generate 1-cost spells at most. And the Shaman can theoretically run them out of all those resources completely, but once a deck that has flexibility to choose the length of their game plan, whether it be Rogue or Mage, they can take all the greedy options, comes into play, the Shaman has pretty much no chance.
And he's going to wait to see what the secret is.
I wish he could find a Verisa lethal. I thought that card would be so sick when it was announced. The guy that obliterates a minion and you take some damage for it, but didn't end up seeing standard play, but it will be the nail in the coffin there for Fury Hunter. I don't think he can be too upset about this result, because as we were saying, this is not the lineup that he was building his lineup to face.
Exactly. It was one of those things. It's to oversimplify it. If you bring an anti-Bomb Warrior lineup and your opponent doesn't have Warrior, you're in trouble. You probably lose that match. But the point is, there'll be more people in the tournament that bring Warrior than don't, is the expectation. So therefore, that's how Fury Hunter gains some wins. And with that loss, I imagine he's just got to laser focus now and go for that 7-2 score, as he will be going down to 4-2. But Blythe's doing pretty well for himself there with that win, with this unorthodox lineup. So pretty excited to see that. And we can see what the round looks like at the end of this one. Give Please sitting there at 6-0. Gabby, XC and JU as well, all looking pretty good at the 6-0 mark. But any other standout names for you here, Gia?
I mean, I just want to put more emphasis on Give Please, because he was a near miss for APAC Grandmasters just this season, just falling a little bit short, but given his incredible performance throughout this entire year, I think he's in such a good spot to enter Grandmasters next year, and I'm very excited. I hope I did not curse him, because not completely out of the woods just yet, but 6-0 is super impressive. Can talk about Gamer RVG. That's a name that I see a lot on Ladder. I think he's actually practice partners with my friend from the Philippines, Enrico, and they have played in different Masters tours together, and it's good to see RVG still grinding grinding and making it to a good score here in Madrid.
Yeah, he's also hitting both as well, right? He's doing the grind to play competitively. That's 100% his focus, but he also streams as well. So